I'm Paul from ElkNut Outdoors, and today what we're going to do is we're going to discuss the estrus buzz. Now some refer to this sound as the estrus scream, so if you've heard either one of those titles, both apply to the same sound that we're talking about. And this is a sound that is generally used by cows, and it has a very unique tone to it. Not only that, it has a specific meaning, the same as most elk sounds do. Whether we're talking about a challenge bugle or a location bugle or an excited cow call or pleading, they all have their certain meanings. And that's the important part right there, is understanding what each one refers to when the elk are using them. In this case, we're talking about the estrus buzz, and it too has a specific meaning to the elk. And isn't this what's important? It's not how I view it, or how others may view it and try to explain it, but what does this sound mean to the elk? Because they're the ones that they're using it toward each other. So when they're using this sound within their own ranks, what is their understanding? Is this actually a breeding sound? Is it one that cows use when they're ready to be bred? You know, that's a good question, because if you go through the internet and a lot of hunting magazines, they kind of lean toward that. Some are unsure. So what you have to do when you're trying to evaluate a sound is not take it out of context. Just because we hunters enter the woods like late August, September, October, these are when we're around. Now, when we hear these sounds, such as the estrus buzz in this case, we kind of have a thought in our mind that maybe this is the only time frame that this sound is used. And if that's the case, then yes, it is very possible that this could be an estrus type sound when a cow is nearing or ready to be bred. But what if this sound is heard outside of the breeding times? Because we know cows are bred late August through the month of September into October even, as they can hit a second, third, and even a fourth cycle, which can lead into November if these cows have not conceived yet. And so they can go from one cycle to another. So that's why this sound could actually be heard throughout those various months. But what if you're hearing this sound in May and in April, June, July, when we know these aren't breeding times? So that means you have to reevaluate the way you're thinking to put this sound into proper perspective. Because if we don't, what good are we doing? Just because we feel it should mean this, it doesn't make it right. That means that if we are going to use this sound in an inaccurate way towards elk, we may not be doing ourselves a favor here. So what we want to do is have an accurate meaning of when is the estrus buzz used. Therefore, when we hear it in the field, we can get a good idea of what's going on over there. If we decide that we're going to use it ourselves, then we need to know what this sound means to the elk, so we use it in an area or at a time frame that elk expect to hear this sound. So it's not sitting out, out of the idea of being unusual, that we use this sound where it doesn't fit. So understanding what the estrus buzz means is very important, and it's an easy sound to actually imitate. It's derived from making a cow sound, and then what they do, or what we do as humans, is we throw a little bit of our throat inflection in it, kind of a We're doing that as we allow our tongue to touch the reed in a light manner, which will give a slight vibration along with that inflection from our throat, and it'll give a slight buzz. Now, what I'll do right here is I'm going to go ahead and just make a regular cow sound or two, and then I'll throw that slight buzz in, and you'll see the difference in those two different tones. And then what we'll do is discuss the meaning behind this, when the elk are actually using it and why they use it. So here's a couple of breed cow sounds along with the estrus buzz, and again you'll notice the difference. Now it should be pretty easy to note the nice pure whines maybe a little calf in there, and then throw out that buzz. So, when a cow's using this, or multiple cows, what are they saying? If it's not a breeding sound, what are they saying? And the fact is that yes, you will hear this sound well outside these months of the rut as we know them when we're out hunting. So, if that's the case, and you can look on a lot of different YouTube videos, some of the hunting channels, and you'll see this sound being used in May, June, July, all these months. But watch the action of the elk. What's taking place? Is there something trying to breed them? No, not at all. So what's actually taking place here is when this sound is being used, and if you look at a lot of the actual video out there, you'll notice that other elk are around. You'll notice that sometimes there's large bunches and they get separated. Sometimes they're into heavy fog, or they're crossing a creek or stream and getting into the timber. Some of the elk are over there, some aren't, some are apprehensive. And all of a sudden you'll hear this buzz being used, giving a direction to these elk. Here's where we are now. Or these are trying to catch up and can't find the elk, and so they get this sound because they're lagging so far behind, and you'll hear them interact with it. A lot of times when there's a lot of rutting going on, you can actually hear this sound from group to group. And all they're doing is letting each other know where they're at. And they're actually even in an invite. You'll see it in groups when cows are moving with a group of 3 cows or 15 or 20 cows as they move through the timber. Some may get separated, and you'll hear them give this sound. This sound, just like any other sound, can be used in a mild manner or it can be used in a more urgent manner. If they're not receiving satisfaction in a response or a visual of this elk that they're talking to, or these elk. And so you'll see them get quite vocal with it. And that's how you want to play with this sound. So this sound, if you really stop and think about it, it can be used as us hunters in many, many ways. Not only can we bring elk our way with this sound, but if you're moving toward elk and you hear them and you're using a cow sound, as you're moving toward, let's say, a bull, and you get to 70, 80, 60, whatever yards, and you can't get any closer, even though he's asking you to come through his short bugles and chuckling, he's asking this cow you're representing to come, you may get to a spot where the terrain does not favor you to continue forward. The wind may be good, but you can't move through these openings or through sparse openings or without being seen by something. So you can actually turn to this sound. Instead of just making a cow sound, which doesn't ask anything of elk, it just says there's an elk there. Use a sound where an actual elk would use for asking for them to come your way. Give them a direction. Put the odds in your favor and use a sound like this. So by using that estrus buzz, you can actually now speak with them, communicate with them, and asking them to come over here. And if they don't, you haven't heard a thing, those elk are still over there. But in many, many cases, when we've used this sound, it's great. It's an awesome sound. It can really make the difference between those elk coming over your way. Give them time. Don't think because you make the estrus buzz or any elk sound that requires assistance or aid from other elk that they should do it within seconds. Sometimes it can be 2-3 minutes, sometimes 10-15 minutes. Allow things to develop. A lot of times they'll just feed their way over to you. They're not in a big hurry. Sometimes they'll come trotting and you can hear them beating like a bunch of elephants coming your way. But the point is it's the right sound at the right time. And it's the only thing that maybe you can actually, grasp onto and use. Because you can't get through that opening. There's just no way. So if nothing happens there, you're probably better just to back out. But the point being is that this estrus buzz, it can denote excitement. It can denote an invite. It can denote a direction, especially if there's separation between cow, calf, or maybe even a cow in the group. And so that's when this sound is being used. And again, it can be used with major excitement if they're not receiving a satisfactory response. Because a lot of times these cows can get separated from a great distance from the group. And if they cannot find them, and they think they should be in a certain area, they can get quite vocal with this. Very vocal and very rapid in its use. So not only are you trying to use it, but if you're hunting in the woods, and all of a sudden you come across this sound and you hear it at a distance, it tells you what's going on. You're not just like, what is that? Or, oh, there's elk over there. No, there's elk either inviting or in search of.
And so, you see, this helps to paint a picture in your mind's eye of the fact that there are other elks somewhere around there. Because they're trying to get direction or catch up or whatever the case may be. Each thing can be a different situation. So remember that right there. Those are very, very important keys. It's not just a sound. It's when to use it. And sad to say, some feel they want it to be a breeding sound so bad that instead of them evaluating the whole picture and getting the proper meaning, they really cement it in there and say, this is a breeding sound and that's all there is to it. I've heard it in September. I have footage where they're doing it in large groups. Okay, watch that footage closely. Nowhere at any time will you ever see a bull running to that cow and trying to breed her as she makes that sound. There is none. Because that's not what it means. But people want it to think that. They'll say, oh, guess what? We were using the sound, or we saw elk using it, and the bulls are screaming everywhere. They're going nuts. Well, guess what? They do that over any cow sound when the rut is hot and heavy. Just use normal mews and excited chatter. The same as a lot of times if I'm working a bull and I get that 100, 150 yard range and I bugle and he doesn't say anything. He just shuts up. I'm not going to stay with that. I give him a couple cow sounds, 2 or 3, whatever the case is, depending on his level of aggressiveness or excitement, and he hammers me back with that, I'm going to stay with those cow sounds. But when I do, I'm not going to give him cow chatter, cow talk, social. That's what all that is. I'm going to show him more excitement, where this shows that cow is accepting the invite. So, you see, you're changing things up. But what's he getting excited over? That cow. The cow that's coming his way to join the group. He's not trying to mount her just because she's making that sound. He wants her to join the group. So see, just because a cow is using the estrus buzz and she's within a group, it doesn't all of a sudden, move over to another avenue to where all of a sudden this cow is asking to be bred. No, not at all. It's just showing that she's accepting something or talking to something or giving a direction to something. And so because of the fact that this sound is used throughout the year, throughout the 12 months, you have to be able to look again at that complete picture and have the proper meaning for what that sound stands for. Again, the same as if you're listening to chuckles, grunts, any other, a pleading, that's almost a given, what a cow is trying to do when she's pleading. Or the same as if your dog, it comes to you and you're not paying attention to it, and it starts to whine, real low moans and pleading. I mean, the dog doesn't have to speak English to tell you what it's asking for. It wants some attention. Maybe it wants you to throw its toy, or it's hungry, or wants outside because it's made other sounds and you haven't acknowledged it. You see, and so they start giving that little pleading whine, and you're like, okay, I know what you want. Even though they're not speaking English, elk can do the same thing if they're not satisfied with one response or sound that they're using. Then they take it up to that real nervous whine and really wanting the attention for whatever that need is. So remember, all these sounds have their place, and we'll talk about a lot of these in some of these other interviews. But this is exactly what the estrus buzz means. It means, again, the direction or separation they're trying to get together. And again, this is what this sound sounds like, and I'm making very slight tongue pressure to the latex. And when I'm doing it, I like using the center of my tongue. You can use the tip of your tongue for it, but the center of the tongue actually helps to activate that latex a little bit better, and I can put very soft tongue pressure to it as I breathe and go past it. And here it is again. And see, cows will play with that sound like that, depending on how demanding they are with it. If they're doing it real slow and real subtle, then that's what that means. It's not an urgent type thing. But pay attention in the woods as you go out from year to year. Try to listen and find that sound, because it's very unusual to hear it. It's not something we always hear all the time, like the classic bugle. And so, think of yourself special if you hear it, other than watching it on YouTube somewhere where there's a ton of elk everywhere, and so it's more readily noticed.
when you have large groups like that, where a lot of us hunt over the counter like that, public land. A lot of times you don't have that volume of elk. But listen for that sound.